Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Good evening. We're a little bit late today. I had a couple of things that were going on today in the background, trying to get in order for this episode, and nothing seemed to want to work right. Right. I even went in and I had cut this video up because I really do try to take the time to give you something visual, as my wife always says, but for whatever reason, the program decided it didn't want to do what it was supposed to do. And so I eventually just said, you know what? I'll just take the edits that I have and we'll try to make it work whatever way we need to make it work. All right. If you're new to the program, hi, this is the Erudition Network. My name is Eddie Phillips. This is our interactive Black History and Knowledge session. Tonight, we're going to talk about some history, which we always do on every Thursday. But I wanted to get into some controversial history. And what's funny is I don't really consider this particular history to be controversial. I find it ridiculous, actually, what is going on. And it does have a historical background to it. Hey, Sean Anthony, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. No, Eric, I did not get censored or shut down. We just had a couple of things that were going wrong. Maybe it was a conspiracy. No, I'm not gonna add to that. To not get me to talk about this particular topic. As we look through history tonight. Let me, before I'm getting ready to get started, I even told you what this is really about. If you didn't see our advertisement tonight, what we're going to talk about tonight is Egyptians, Africans. Are Egyptians African? Are they Persian? Are they Greek? What are they? Now, here's the thing. If you look at your globe, your map, your atlas, you will notice that Egypt, you see it here. Man, let's get a big one. Egypt here falls within Africa, right? I mean, if you look at it, it's right here, right? But for years now, centuries actually, we have been perpetuating this lie, this evil lie that from pseudo history that Egyptians are Greek, Mediterranean. I'm sorry, tongue tied tonight. From the Mediterranean, from the Med. But the fact of the matter is, yes, thank you for the globe, Tina. It is a nice globe. The fact of the matter is that Egyptians are in Africa. Egypt is in Africa. And nobody have to, we could say whatever we want to say. We can argue, but let's at least agree on that fact. on that fact, right? Hey, and by the way, if this is an interactive session, so if you have questions, comments, whatever, hey, please feel free to ask them, and we will get into that. But this is a deep lesson, and I really want to get into this. But the truth of the matter is that we really need to start to understand where these lies come from. You know, America is an Enlightenment country. In other words, we were founded by people who were part of the Enlightenment movement. There's the philosopher, historian, David Hume, who has a statue in Europe and is lauded over for all of these great things that he said and ideas that he came up with. And the funny part about Hume is that he had a lot of racist things to say about Africa. Here's one of his actual statues right here, right now. And when he talks about there being no valid history coming out of Africa, you know, he said, I am apt to suspect the Negroes and in general all other species of man, for there are 4 or 5 different kinds, to be naturally inferior to the whites. That's what he believed. And you look at men like Immanuel Kant, another, he's a German Enlightenment, who denounced blacks also and Africans also, right? And you can go look up these men, you can go look up their quotes. But here's the thing, when your teachers and your Enlightenment thinkers make savage comments about black people in general, all over the world, rather it be in Africa or abroad, then you have to really understand that this was an attempt to make us look like something other, something bad. And that's unfortunate, but it is true. But it is true. Tonight, I see your question there, Eric. What did you say? So Jada's biggest news film, there has been outrage for the portraying of Cleopatra as a black. We're going to talk about that, but I want to slow walk you to that. Hey, please feel free to share this episode. Get people up in here, get them to talk. Here's the thing. We can say many different things about these people who came up with this theory, the historians and the different people. But I like to go back in history. When I look at things, I like to go as far as I can and look at what actual historians closer to those periods thought, right? If we go back to 400 BC and we look at the historian Herodotus, right? Herodotus is a respected historian. And when Herodotus talked about the Egyptians, he said they are a dark-skinned and woolly hair people, and that you could not differentiate, and I paraphrase this part, them, the Egyptian or the Ethiopian. They are very similar. They are exact. There's no bias. Now let's understand something. During this period of time, no bias, no colorism that Immanuel Kant, David Hume were proselytizing. That was of that. It was simply Herodotus going and making a statement about what he saw. He also described them as the Egyptians and the Ethiopians being religiously, excessively religious, beyond all other men. These are facts. These are the things that were said. But yet, we are in a society where if you tell somebody that they are African or of African heritage, that is Egyptian, they will immediately stop you and tell you, no, I'm Persian, I am Greek, Arab, anything but what I am, because I cannot allow myself to be put or stovepiped into the idea that I am African. And then we ask ourselves the question, why do they feel that way? Well, these Enlightenment thinkers are part of it. But the other issue of it is, what is Africa? Africa is wealth. Africa is wealth. And people want to hold wealth and knowledge. No one wants to say that knowledge, ingenuity, all of these things came out of Africa. But that is exactly what it is. And yet, the lies persist. I'm going to share a video with you all, a couple of them actually, because I want you to consider this. I wanted to cut this down. So as we go through these videos, what I'm going to try to do is make it so I may move it a little forward, right, for time consideration. But I do want to share these videos because I think we need to see it for what it is. All right. The first one I'm going to share with you is a young lady here. It's 15 seconds.
Egyptians were black. No, they were not. I don't know what's the obsession with our skin color, but we were not black. There are Nubian Egyptians, they look like that, but that's a very slim group. Egyptians come in all skin.
So you see her say that Egyptians are not black. Did she points out in this video that there are black Egyptians, right? Nubians. And we know that Nubian culture, Ethiopian culture, influenced heavily the Egyptian culture, if not provided them their culture. I told you all a few weeks ago, we were talking about Wadi Kubanayas, and I went in detail with you to present to you the idea of how that happened, how people migrated and why they migrated. And I gave you the idea of solar insolation, of how the earth, as it was going in ancient times, the weeble wobble, as we call it, of the earth changed. And because of that, Africa is a continent that has 3 different climates. And so people, in order to survive, had to go north, go south, try to find a place to live. The Wadi Kubanayas were river inlets like the Nile that were lush and allowed the Egyptians to go there, the early Egyptians, the early man, to go there and live. We know this to be the truth. But unfortunately, people have not been taught this. And so we are lost in this foolishness here. You said, I think this is a larger issue here because what I've seen as what video you have shown is almost shameful to be black. What did she say? Why did she say we are not black? Because it is, Eric, it has made them to believe that black is wrong. This is not even the only video. I'm going to show you another one because people are out here putting out this fallacy, right? Here's another one.
Dear Netflix, do I look like I'm dark-skinned to you? I don't think so.
Does any of my siblings look like they're dark-skinned?
Hadi iyilik, please. We are all 100% Egyptians. So if you have the freaking audacity to claim that my ancestors were dark-skinned, which I don't understand how, I'm just gonna go ahead and call y'all black. And I don't care if you call me racist. We are not black. We never were black. We never will be black. So we do not care. You can just... And yeah, one more thing. You cannot just, change history. It's history. It's well known. I mean, dreams and wishes do come true, but you went too far, Netflix. Too freaking far. Not gonna happen. Not this time. No. And if you think that we're just gonna sit there and be okay with it, no. And by the way, we do not care what you think. We do not care what your grandma told you. Your grandma can shove it up her...
Again, right? Something, as you said, Eric, something is wrong with the idea of being black. Could it be because the Arab slave trade, which happened before the American slave trade, right? Could it be that that whole background, the Persians and the idea, no one wants to be associated with slavery. No one wants to be associated with being subservient. And so what we do is we go down this idea of denying. She said no history. But obviously, this young woman does not know history. Neither does she want to know. She dissuaded you from even going to listening to your ancestors, to the older folks, to people who may know, people closer to the history than her. But it goes on. It goes on and on. Here's another one.
I was giving very serious consideration to responding to this comment, as well as these others, directly. However, my friend, who happens to be Egyptian and actually lives in Egypt, said it better than I could.
Hey buddy, Egyptian here. Let's take a look at the streets of Cairo together, shall we? You're Egyptian, right? Yeah. Are you black? No. Okay. So, George here, okay, are you Egyptian? Yes. Okay. Your ancestors, the pharaohs, right? Yes. Okay. Are you black? No. No. Okay, perfect. So, George, what do you think about people that say that all Egyptians, the real Egyptians, are black?
مستحيل احنا كلنا لون زي ما انت شايف كده.
So he goes into this whole thing for a while, speaking, he's not speaking English. And then the guy who asks him, right?
And there you have it. So if you don't understand this, well, ask an Egyptian friend.
And after that, nothing more really need be said, does it?
So as long as I ask my Egyptian friend, right, who's in Egypt, supposedly, then it's all good. It's okay. Let's forego, Egyptology. Let's forego the history of Egypt, Nubia, Ethiopia. Let's forego any idea of world history, of genealogy, of science. Let's just trust the fact that people don't want to be associated with being recognized as black. And ladies and gentlemen, tonight, what we're really talking about here is a controversial thing, because people have put it in their minds that they're not black, right? This is just the fact of what it is. And I know a lot of you are angry with the idea, right? But let me tell you something. All week, in my direct messages, in my messages that I receive on Erudition, this is what I've been getting all week. all week. Before I even knew that there was a so-called controversy, right? And it's disturbing, but it's what it is. And then you ask yourself the question, well, why do they feel this way? Why do they feel this way? Well, I'm going to tell you why. In the early 1970s, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, I said this many months ago, I did a lesson on this, talking about Egypt. They commissioned an 8-volume history on Africa. They wanted to talk about the role and how the ancient Egyptians in history, who they were. And they held this huge symposium on January 1974. This is the UN now. And 18 European, listen, and Arab scholars claimed that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasian. And the only 2 African professors on this at the symposium stood up and said that this was ignorant and talked about the Neolithic Africans and gave them the history, but this was ignored. And what it was is the reason why UNESCO went with it is because they said there was a lack of balance in the discussion, but they overpacked the discussion with Europeans and Arab scholars. And they ignored the participation of Blacks. So here we are, right? Looking at what has happened in the world. Don't be shocked. Don't be upset. Just face it for what it is. These are things that we have to address. And I posted in my Facebook thing before I did this episode tonight. I posted that this is not a lesson that I like to teach. Nobody wants to teach a lesson where people are making it a problem for you to be who you are. Nobody wants that. A moment ago, I got a shock, well, dang, from my son. My wife looked at me crazy, but this is real. Egypt has a law. They have a law in Egypt to dissuade you from associating Egyptians with Africans. Why would you create such a law? And it's shocking for historians because we've had pseudo-archaeology, we've had lies, we've ignored the historians like Herodotus, we've ignored the biblical historians like Josephus, we've ignored what anybody has said who lived during those times. It's far beyond, is Cleopatra Black? I will tell you this. When they pulled the bones of Cleopatra's sister, she had African features. Because you can't find the body of Cleopatra. You could call her whatever. Because there are certain historical documents that claim that she is more Greek. And she associated with being Greek. No one's saying that the Egyptians were not a mixed people. But that's the issue there. Why is your mixture of European? Why do you proselytize or exaggerate or emphasize the Persian, the Greek, the European over the African? Why? Comedians and actors are actually out here putting out things about Egypt that should be known more so than historians. And historians just say, well, they should know that, right? They should know that. Let's go again. This was taken from an actual
travel to Egypt,
news program,
where Egyptian authorities are calling out Netflix for allegedly blackwashing the African Queen's Queen Cleopatra docuseries. That's it. It's narrated and executive represent black women in her new series, fake portrayal of Queen Cleopatra, and have actually filed a legal complaint in the wake of the trailer that was released last week, claiming that Netflix.
Let's get to this.
That was against promoting Afrocentric thinking.
I'm sorry.
That was knew that Egypt had a media law that was against promoting Afrocentric thinking, which includes slogans and writings aimed at distorting and erasing Egyptian identity. It seems like an attempt to maintain a very certain image and idea of who Egyptians are. You know, I've told you this story off camera before, how in the 5th grade I had a classmate that was Egyptian. My father's from Ghana, and I thought, wow, it's kind of cool that, you know, both of us have parents from Africa. And he said, no, my parents are Egyptian, right?
Hear that, what he just said right there. 5th grade. 5th grade. His classmate, his father being from Ghana, he felt that there was connection, an African connection. His classmate told him, no, I'm Egyptian. I'm not African. Now, my culture has benefited from all of the other blacks in Africa, but I'm Egyptian. Because I don't want to be associated with what is black. My family, my father told me that's not what we should be associated with.
And in the 5th grade, he drew a very stark line to say, we ain't the same as the rest of y'all.
I don't know. So, you know, I wasn't really good at math and science, chemistry, all that, but I loved history, geography. And if I can remember correctly, Egypt is on the continent of Africa. Am I correct?
It is.
So it's not too far of a stretch to call them Africans. Am I correct? But they will shut you down in a heartbeat, just like they shut down Kevin Hart, who was on his way to perform.
So, yeah, they will shut you down. They do not want to hear it, even though historians and history proves it to be a fact, even though a map proves it to be a fact. And so here we are in a world where here we are 2023, and you have countries with legal standards to stop you from sharing history and culture. You know, every time we do Erudition, every Thursday, I sit down and I take time to do these lessons, and I try very hard to be fair. This lesson is hard to be fair because it's just ludicrous. It's ludicrous. There's another video. I hated this video, but this was like, I think the 4th one. I got this video like 6 or 7 times this week. 6 or 7 times this week. This individual is everywhere, and you may have seen it. It's been on YouTube, it's been on Facebook, it's been on TikTok, and it's just I don't see this as controversial. This is ignorance. And before I get further into the historical fact of it, I have to unpack the ignorance of it. I have to.
I'm tired of privileged African Americans born in one of the richest countries in the world using the millions of dollars from Hollywood to spread cultural appropriation propaganda. Yeah, you guessed right. Netflix is making a documentary about Cleopatra in which she's presented as black. Producer of the documentary is Jada Pinkett Smith, who you might know for her husband's public violent outbursts.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
Look, I'm not opposed to the idea of actors playing people of different race in fiction. That is fine, but don't.
So let's unpack that. When that situation at the Oscars happened last year, one of the things that we talked about, we did a show, we talked about how the impact of African Americans all over the world and how our actions play into hold on a moment. I had to respond to another comment here. But here's the thing. When you put these images out about African Americans all over the world, what you're creating is a situation where you are giving people the flames they need, right, to keep this ignorance going. You know, most times I won't always comment on videos, but we have to. You know, I allow other people to do it, and I may just reference it, but because I continue to get these, because they're all over the place, and they're not sharing you actual history. This person goes so deep into it that at one point in the video, he actually, and I'm going to go to that, he actually talks about, this is his reasons why blacks, specifically in America, should not comment on Egyptians.
Of an entitled brat. Just look at this. Needs of Greeks and Egyptians. They have no right to play with other people's history like it's a toy in the hands of an entitled brat. Just look at this. This is average salary in Egypt, $586. And this is average welfare check in America, $617. This means that the black person in the United States is entitled to more money monthly just for being born in America than an Egyptian that has to work his ass off for it. That's how.
You don't have the right to talk about your history. People get nervous when you talk about your history. They enact laws. They create scales like that. Because in his mind, the African American who was enslaved gets money simply because he or she is a citizen. Why should they ever complain? Why? And this is the reason behind this lesson tonight. Y'all quiet tonight because you're nervous. I get it. You're angry. I get it. But it's factual. And it needs to be discussed. And we can't keep allowing it to fester, to grow, to get all over the internet, to allow people to lie. The last one I'm going to show you here is an actual professor. Actually, it is a professor who they went and dug up an Egyptian servant, high official. And he was so shocked, right, to see that the results of what they pulled up.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shamai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shamai had Nubian features, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shamai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bone and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia.
Again, history, archaeology, all of this shows what? That Egypt is a multicultural state. It has been. It has always been. Even before Alexander the Great, even before the Romans, even before the Arabs, it was a multicultural state. Because all life comes out of Africa. It's very hard for anybody to sit here and lie. But the lies have been told. And they consistently and continually are told on and on and on and on. To even a scientist is unnerved. It's a surprise. How is it a surprise? How is it a surprise? A few years ago, the Harvard historian Henry Louis Gates, he went down to Africa, and he did. I would ask you to go watch his program, right, where he talks about the wonders of Africa, right, wonders of the African world. And when he went to go down to Africa, people clearly African were angry when he asked them, do you have African or Arab blood? Because they did not want to associate themselves with being African. Now, you could say to yourself, well, Eddie, that doesn't, why? But we've told you why. We've told you the political situations of what was going on. We've told you this. If you are out there and you have a question, comment, concern, issue, please feel to drop it in the chat. Please feel free. But I will tell you that this is sad. It's sad, and it's unfortunately something that we're still dealing with. While you're creating your question. If you have a question, I'm going to type in a book that I think you should read. You said, what do I think Cleopatra looked like? I think Cleopatra, being the product of incestual marriages, cultural cheating, she could have been very, very, some artists of the time painted her in different ways. We see Egyptian art at the times that had her in different ways. That's why people argue whether she was Greek or not. But for a political reason, there was a good reason to call yourself Greek. The Romans idolized the Greeks. They idolized Macedonians. They idolized Alexander the Great. And anytime if you wanted to have political connection, that's what you would do. But let us not lie that Romans also engaged with Africans, dark-skinned Africans. If you have history books saying we were never, it is a blatant like, or rather, she said so perfectly phrased, it's a fairy tale. But a lot of these people, Sean Anthony, aren't reading these books. A lot of these people aren't reviewing these historical historians like Hugh Gates. They've gone out to Africa. Historians like John Henry Clark, self-educated, went out and asked these questions about Africa. It is in the Bible. We see the cultures of the Egyptians. We see that it is not uncommon, that it was not uncommon for people in Egypt, even Moses, to go out and marry Black, darker Africans. We know that. But because we are in such a politically racist environment in the world, we see things like the videos that we were seeing here. Why do you think it gets so much pushback to display Black people? If displayed white, no pushback even. Well, here's the thing. You'll see in those videos, right? I laughed when I was looking at some of the videos, only in the fact that we will go out and we will share fails and folks' TikTok videos of them falling into boo-boo and everything else. But people get in their feelings when you share what people are saying. And we forget that the whole nature of social media is to share. So I find it ludicrous that people will get on and say some of the lunatic things that we just saw. There is no property value for what you're doing. That's, you put that out there freely, just like what I do right now. And people have the right to comment on it, which is a good thing, which is what we're doing tonight, to discuss it, to dissect it. That's why it's there. But I think that the pushback comes because people aren't being taught, Eric. They're not being taught. Go and read Herodotus. go and read some of the historians of the past. Go back and read these things, not because you have to read them for your school papers, not because someone made you read it. Read it because you want to know. Read it because you need to know. Because if you do not, you're going to fall into the trap of what the people that I showed you earlier. You're going to be surprised, like that scientist, the archaeologist was surprised, because in his mind, in his teaching, right, this doesn't make sense. The original Egyptians were indigenous to Africa. The reason why the Egyptians focus on the sun so much, I even told you. Because 8,000 BCE, those same Neolithic indigenous people that lived in the Sahara lived there because of the warm weather. So they could raise cattle, they could fish, they could grow crops. But we know from science that the Saharan climate dried up due to solar insolation, due to a slight change in the Earth's orbit. And because of that change in climate, these people had to migrate to the Nile Valley, where they could then still live, raise animals, grow crops, and fish. We know the different kingdoms of Egypt. Go look up the Wadi Kubanayas and understand why people had to migrate, why they put so much emphasis on the sun, because the sun changed their entire life. It changed everything that their ancestors were doing. The drying up of Africa, the upper tip of Africa, was significant. There's a reason then to map the stars, to map the sun, to know where these things are, because we don't even really fully understand the cataclysm that may have happened for something simply as the change in a climate that made tribes move to different areas, to tribalize based on the fact of what happened scientifically. But when you have historians and writers like David Hume, like Immanuel Kant, like Thomas Jefferson, who wrote into documents and demonized Blacks, what are you to expect? What are you to think? We see that in every aspect of our life, even today. You say, even if Cleopatra was not Black, it was almost an offensive that we even portrayed that she was. I thought Black is proud, but apparently not, even though there are red pill wokeness truth be told, nobody wants to claim to be Black and even distance itself from that label. Eric, it's so bad. When they flooded the Nile Valley, when they flooded the Nubian Valley, knowing that there was history there, to hide connections, that's not me making it up. They did that on purpose. And most Africans won't talk about it. They won't talk about it, even though the Nubians experienced it and they were pushed down to make room for dams to power Egypt and the Nubian Valley.
Pre-Islam. They ought to. But will this have your dam is built?
No problem.
No?
This man here had a school.
We all glad. We want to see the dam today before tomorrow.
But will this school be wiped out?
You see, I want to tell you something. If somebody come make a dam here, he come tell me, leave the mosque or leave.
He refused to go against the idea of them flooding the valley, even though it was going to lose a school that had stood for hundreds of years. Because he did not want to go against the government. And now we know why, with the laws that were put in place there. When he asked you'd
only find one person who was prepared to say so. The Grand Dame of Nubian politics is Suad Ibrahim. She believes that because the Nubian people are so fiercely independent, they are a threat to the fundamentalist government.
There you go. There you go. It's deeper than what we think. And this is not the first time I've talked about this. We have Africans denying that they are African because it's not something that they feel they should be proud of.
Assalamu alaikum. Shikamu. I want to understand the history of Lamu. How Lamu was founded. Is it an Arab civilization or is it an African civilization?
Lamu, in effect, was Arab civilization since more than 1,000 years.
Sheikh Badawi is proud of his Arabic roots. He tells me he can trace his family back to the Prophet Muhammad. You have a noble ancestry. Do you have African ancestors as well?
Sasa sisi hatupendelei kwa kizazi cha Kiafrika ni kitoevu, lakini twajua Afrika na kizazi chake na pande mwingine Asia na kizazi chake.
He said we try not to think badly of those who do. This is a deeper issue. This is a deep issue. And it is something that I will say again, I covered this, I believe this was last year, and people were uncomfortable then because they realized that this is not just an American issue. And if someone asks you to challenge this assumption, I'm gonna lay in here both during this program and after this program, books and things you need to read, places you need to go. I thought Dr. Gates did a great job in his program of many years ago. This is not something that is new. And you can go and get that program on YouTube. It's there. He put it on there so that you can, just like we show bits and pieces of it, I can't show you everything, but you can go on there, right? And look at that. Not just Henry Louis Gates teaching you your heritage with actors and people, right? Something for you actually watch and learn. It's a multiple series. It's not just something you watch a little bit, but I guarantee you, because I appreciate what he did, it will open your eyes. If there is another question on here, please put that question on up here. If you guys got any more questions, I am here to answer your questions. I know it's been a lot of me talking today, but I'm here to answer your questions. Anything you are reasoning through. I will also say, since no one's typing anything, I have been spending a little bit of my time trying to get through the works of Diodorus Siculus, the volumes of his world history that are still there. And one of the quotes that hit me so hard, and it's so funny because I was just reading this about 3 weeks ago, is that Diodorus Siculus, this is an ancient historian. He said that the Ethiopians conceived themselves to be greater antiquity than any other nation. And it is probable that born under the sun's path, its warmth. Remember what I told you, what happened? They may have ripened earlier than other men. They suppose themselves also to be the inventors of divine worship, of festivals, of solemn assemblies, of sacrifices, and every religious practice. They also affirm that the Egyptians are only a colony of older Ethiopian power, and that the Egyptians of that time too asserted that their civilization came from the black tribes in the South. That's not it. Diodorus Siculus wrote this 1,000 years ago. It's in his book 3. Because he wanted you to know this. He wasn't motivated by race, by ignorance, by fear. This is why Carter G. Woodson told us we have to know our history. We have to know it. And because we don't know it. Here's the thing, Key. I thank you for joining us, man. No, I did not talk about the burning of the library. Here's the thing that a lot of people do not know. There are multiple libraries. With libraries in Timbuktu. I always tell people with history that God will not be mocked. Right? God will not be mocked. And what I mean by that is that there is always another path. There's always something left. And a lot of us have been taught, right? Only a little bit. And that's and if you and some of we learned a little further. But this is the reason why it is so important to learn your history. Carter G. Woodson wrote multiple books. Father Black History Month. W.B. Du Bois wrote books. You see Henry Louis Gates. He's written books. John Henry Clark wrote books. Who gave their entire life toward the illumination of Black people. Going in and trying to fight the pseudoscience. Du Bois particularly argued with intellectuals of the day. And every time I get on, I try to share with you some history. somewhere to go. Go and read Woodson's The African Background Outlined. Go read what he wrote and what he took from scholars. Go read the Cushite. Know who you are. Go look up what UNESCO said in 1974 and how they made these lies up. So we argue over Cleopatra because Cleopatra can't be found. Right? But we don't look at the fact that that was a multicultural ethnic society. We ignore the fact that Cleopatra's other relatives were frowned. We ignore the fact that Princess Arsenio, that's her name, who was murdered by her own sister, by Cleopatra, that they found her skull in 1926. And it wasn't even found in Africa. It was found in Ephesus. And when looked at the DNA, realized she was Black. She had Black Nubian heritage. But we're still arguing about Cleopatra. Go look her up. And so the people that I showed you tonight, the folks that we talked about on social media, and that wasn't even all of them. I have people hit me up so badly over the last few days. Go look up her sister. Know these facts about your history. All right. Before I get ready to get out of here, get ready to close this out. Why is it so shameful to be Black? The European colonizers took our resources, yet we still argue that the most powerful ancient leadership is not Black and shameful to even be mentioned. Again, it comes down to colonization, control. It comes down to the fact, I will give you an idea, an emphasis on control. I was talking with someone online last week in one of the Black history groups that I'm a part of on social media. And the was we're both commenting on something in history. And the person asked me, said, well, how do you learn this stuff? I said, it takes time. You got to read the bad and the good and the bad. You have to be able to go through it. But you also got to go far back. That means translation. That means work. Everybody's not going to do that. This is why when people regurgitate something to me about history, I often say, okay, but where'd you get it from? And then give you somewhere else to go look. Closer to what it was. See, because a lot of those ancient folks were not manipulated by racism, bigotry, and bias and implicit bias. Greek myth, I said this before, are written about African nations. This is just reality. So I think everything that we talked about tonight, it needed to be discussed. I hope you got something from it. It's hard to do all this in 1 hour. But it is definitely something that we needed to discuss. And I'm glad that we're able to discuss it tonight because I am tired of it. I'm tired of the fact that we don't seem to know who we are. I'm tired because I get on every week and I try to tell us who we are. Give you places to go, places to study. And we seem to still find people. We'll be back this Saturday. We'll do a wrap up this Saturday. We try to do that. I'm trying to be more committed to this because I know different people like Janaris and other ones, people who follow us, aren't able to get on here during the regular week, during regular times of the week. And so I wanted to try to open that up, that wrap up late Saturday evenings for us to be able to discuss these things. So I hope that you all could definitely, if you have someone who you think would gain something from this discussion, please encourage them to watch this episode. Watch the episode Tatum had on Monday, and the episode Boys had yesterday. Watch our episode them so that we may grow this network and grow understanding. But if there is no other question, I'm going to get ready to sign off of here tonight. I thank you for sticking with us, and I encourage toward for free. Let me know. I may have I can direct you to a place where you can read things online for free. You don't have to always buy every book. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Key. I saw you on here. Thank you. I think Tina was on here earlier, Sean Anthony, and everybody else who came on the program and left something here. Thank you for your inputs, and I will see you next Thursday. Thank you.